Hey everyone, welcome to the next section of this course. We covered components, we covered data binding, and we now know how to create components and how to let them work together. We learned that components are directives, and we learned in general that there is this directives thing which seems to control a big chunk of each Angular 2 application, which seems to be quite important. That's why in this section we'll focus exclusively on directives so that you get a better understanding what directives are exactly, how we can create our own directives, and I'm not talking about components but of real directives, and how everything works together. Let's get started. I fired up the project from our first section where we learned about components. Now, as I said, components are directives. And I already explained what directives are in one of the first videos in this course, but to repeat it and to really emphasize it, directives are instructions in the HTML code which will tell Angular 2 how to alter the code or how to change the code, how to manipulate the document at the point where it encounters this directive. And therefore, as I said, a component is a directive and we embed it through its selector, which in the HTML part of our document or of our application looks like a normal tag. Now in this puzzle file, we can see directives in work. We got this ng class and this ng style binding here. And what we're doing here is property binding, as we can see by the squared brackets. But here we are binding to a directive, namely the ng class and the ng style directive. So we're not directly binding to the property of the section element. The section element doesn't have an Angular 2 property called ng class or ng style, but we're binding to a property in the ng class directive, and the directive in return is what we attach to the element. The opposite, and we learned this in the last chapter, is here with the hidden tag or the hidden element, where we're directly binding to the hidden Angular 2 property on this h2 tag. So this might be a bit confusing, but the difference really is this: here with the hidden property binding, we're directly binding to a property of the h2 element, whereas here we're binding to a property in the directive. But the directive in return will alter the appearance of the section. In this case, it will append a class, a CSS class, or multiple classes. Now this is called an attribute directive because it looks like an HTML attribute, right? It looks like a source attribute on an image, for example. So therefore, directives which are applied in this way are called attribute directives. Now, the third form of directives, which we haven't touched as of now, are structural directives. Now, structural directives, we will have dedicated videos to each of those forms, by the way. Structural directives will have a syntax of a star and then the directive name, for example, ng4 to create a for loop, but we will see this in action soon. Structural directives not only change the element to which they are attached, like attribute directives do, but they change the whole structure of the document. So for example, with a for loop, we can create multiple list items and we only attach it to one list item and it will be dynamically multiplied if needed. Therefore, those are called structural directives. Now, we got a couple of built-in directives, but not too many, to be honest. Most of the things we're doing here is pure property binding. There aren't that many built-in directives. And we also can build our own directives. So just as we can build custom components to create our app, we can also create custom directives to manipulate our app and to give us possibilities of attaching certain directives to individual HTML element and transform this element in a way we need it to transform. Now we will have a deeper look at attribute directives and structural directives, as well as how to create our own directives in this section. See you in the videos. Bye.